Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name's Bryony and I am one half of the Indecisive Readers. Before I start this video, I would like to address the fact that there is a lot of horrible stuff going on in the world. There are obviously a lot of Black Lives Matters protests going on, and also J.K. Rowling is just the worst, but that's not a surprise and obviously not the big problem. The big problem is obviously the Black Lives Matters movement, and it's not a new issue, but it's an issue that's come to light, and so I would like to address that before I start this video. I will be continuing to post my content, but I will also be hoping to continue posting support for these movements, and so in every description I will just link some petitions for you to sign and some videos for you to watch, so please go and do that if you are watching this video. Today's video is my May wrap-up. In May, I didn't read many books, or I didn't finish many books. I started a lot of books. I started The Court of Miracles by Sister Grant and also The Priory of the Orange Tree, but that is for but that's for a 50 page at a time read along that I'm hosting, and I'm way behind on that, so I should probably catch up on that. But yeah, so let's go through the books I read. I don't actually know why I said I didn't read many books in May. I think it's mostly because I didn't write any notes pre-filming this, and so I was just guessing what books I read as I filmed it. I mean, you will find out later I forgot a book as I was filming this, so yeah. I did read 9 books though, and that's not an insubstantial number of books, so yeah, just ignore everything I say. It was the Believathon in May, and therefore that focuses on reading middle grade books, and I haven't read many middle grade books before, and I don't own many middle grade books, and so I thought there are a few I want to read, so this seems like as good an opportunity as any to start there. So the first middle grade I read was Arusha and the End of Time by Roshni Chokshi. This is a book in the Rick Riordan series which retells mythology written by authors who are kind of that heritage, and it's based on Hindu mythology, and it was the group pick for Myth Take Reads for April and May. This follows a girl called Arusha who has a reputation for telling lies, and one day the lies catch up to her, and some classmates come to her museum where she lives and ask her to light a cursed lamp, and when she does, chaos is released and she has to go on a quest to try and capture the sleeper back into this lamp. I thought it was a really fun book about mythology I didn't really know anything about. I thought how the mythology was introduced, because it's not quite it's not patronising that you don't know anything about it, but it's just kind of introduced to you in a fun and easy way to learn about. I thought that was really good. I liked how all the stories were part of it, because they're not we're going on this quest, but it's just oh, here's this thing that was briefly mentioned in the original stories. I liked the relationships, the family relationships and the friendships were cute in it, and the pigeon a lot of people hated, but I can't really remember a lot about. It didn't blow me away for the first half, and then the second half was much more interesting to me. It set itself up for an interesting sequel, which, because I got the first one out from the library, I would probably do with the sequels. But yeah, I rated it 3 stars. Kind of enjoyed it, wasn't blown away, but it was cute and a nice introduction to Hindu mythology. And also the mother in the story was a single mother, and I thought that was just really interesting because you don't see that a lot, but the relationship between the mother was quite interesting. The fact that Aru kind of felt separate from her but also loyal to her, and it was just cute and I liked it, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of their relationship in the sequels because I feel like it would get explored more then. The second book I read and finished was The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. This was about a town in which every year a child is sacrificed, and this witch doesn't know why they're sacrificed, but she rescues them and takes them to another village, and on the way she feeds them starlight, but this one year she accidentally feeds the child moonlight, and this child becomes magical, and so she keeps the child. And I rated it 5 stars. It really blew me away. I thought it was a really, really cute, really fun middle grade. I didn't know a lot about it, and a lot more happens than just what's in the blurb, and it kind of has like 3 separate strands of a story, and it ties them all together really well. And I thought how it did that was really good, because I didn't know how it was going to do that until like the last 100 pages, so like the last third, and suddenly it all happened. I was like, whoa. And I had to stay up to finish reading it, and it was really quick to read. The characters, and again the family in this, are really lovely. They all love Luna so much, and like just gave her cuddles and things, and yeah, it was really good and I loved it. And I feel like I don't have a lot to say on all of these books, but I do have full, well, mini reviews for each of them that I wrote at the time, so it will be better to remember all my stuff. I'm gonna stay still, my camera's moved and now it won't say where it was. The next book I read, finished, I think. Now I'm questioning which ones I've read. The next book I think I finished. I swear there were more. No, there was. The next book I finished was Pages and Cotillion, the Book Wanderers by Anna James. This is the first book in the Pages and Co series, and it's about a girl called Tilly who lives in her grandparents' bookshop, and one day discovers some characters from books, specifically Anne of Green Gables and Alice in Wonderland. They are her favourite book characters, and suddenly they appear in her shop and take her to her world, and as this is all going on, she's kind of thinking about the disappearance of her mum and how she just like disappeared out of nowhere and no one knows why or where she went. I knew I'd like this when I went into it, because it's kind of like every bookworm's dream, where the world you love becomes real and you can go and enter it and you can meet your favourite characters, and it just sounds so good. Like, I'd love to do that. It's one of those books where you just want to like highlight it and print out all the quotes, and it's really good. I loved how like interactive the pages are. I'm trying to find an example, but like they've got some full page illustrations, they've got some little illustrations, none of them are turning up, which is just showing me up. And when they try and jump into a book, they kind of, I mean that's not an example, but the words kind of go all wiggly, and it makes it a bit more interactive, and I thought it was really fun. I rated it 4.5/4 stars. I can't remember which one I finally put it as, because whilst I really loved it, the kind of big plot twists I saw coming, so that wasn't a surprise, but I still really enjoyed it. It didn't take away my enjoyment at all. It was really quick to read, and I have the sequel, and whilst I didn't read the sequel this month, definitely planning on reading it at some point. Maybe save it, maybe read it, who knows, but I enjoyed it, and yeah, it's really fun. The next book I read was Who Let the Dogs Out by Maz Evans, and I picked this up from the library on a whim. I didn't know I was going to pick this up. I also didn't know it was a middle grade, but basically it's about a boy called Elliot and a goddess called Virgo. She's the constellation Virgo, and she just one day appears on his farm where he's got no money, and they're about to be kicked off the farm, and he accidentally releases this like demon, and it's a world where all the gods are alive, so the Greek gods, the Roman gods, the constellations, probably like Hindu gods, and I just thought it was really interesting. The world is like just so intense, and yeah, I loved it. I didn't know, well, I didn't love it, I rated it 3 stars, but I enjoyed it. I didn't know it was going to be a middle grade book because it was called Who Let the Gods Out, and I just thought it was going to be like a middle grade non-fiction book about all the gods, but then it turned out it was a fiction book, but it was really fun. I liked how all the different gods were incorporated. I always like kind of seeing them in like the present day. It's kind of like a Percy Jackson kind of thing, where Zeus accidentally gets married to 2 or 3 different people on the same day, and it also felt kind of David Walliams-y, kind of that kind of middle grade where the queen is secretly a ninja. And yeah, I didn't love it because I listened to it as an audiobook, and the audiobook kind of put me off. I nearly DNF'd it like within the first 2 or 3 chapters because I was just like, I can't listen to this audiobook. But the problem with the audiobook was the teachers were kind of doing that like really annoying audiobook voice, and like I can't think what it was, but it was really annoying and I hated it, and it really nearly put me off. But after those first 2 chapters they went away and only came back like a few times because obviously he's a school kid, he does have to go to school. But yeah, I enjoyed it overall, rated it 3 stars. I would recommend it because I think it was fun, and I would also definitely pick up the sequels because I would enjoy it and want to see what happens, but I'd have to do it as an ebook because I just couldn't deal with that audiobook again. The final book I had to read to complete the quest for Believathon was A Franklin Sorcery by Michelle Harrison. This was the sequel to A Pinch of Magic, which I read in December last year, rated it 4 stars, really enjoyed it and was really looking forward to the sequel. I also rated the sequel 4 stars. I should probably tell you what it's about, but I need to breathe because I don't run downstairs with that bus. I'm so unfit. But the first book is about 3 sisters who are trapped on an island where they just can't escape because of an old family curse. And then this one follows them as they go on another adventure. Someone appears in their garden one day and they have to kind of try and rescue them, and there are pirates and ghosts and will-o'-the-wisps, and it's just really fun. In this book I really enjoy the family relationships. The big relationships are between the 3 sisters. They are just so loyal to each other. They will always fight to find each other, to save each other, to look out for each other, but also they make so many good friends along the way. They're so loyal to their friends and the friends they make along the way, even if they don't think they can trust them. They like give them a chance, and it's just really lovely. I enjoyed the storytelling in this because, like with the first ones, the stories they know as a child kind of come back to help them, and they're kind of like more like ghost stories in this. They're a bit like spooky, kind of creepy, and it really fit with the vibe. I also like the pirates because I was like a pirate, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. I rated it 4 stars, and I don't know if there's going to be another sequel. I feel like there's not, because it kind of left it on like a quite nice note, but also there are 3 sisters, so I feel like there are going to be 3 books because there are always 3 books. The final book I read for the Believathon, I didn't have to read but wanted to, and read in 2 days, and this was Siren by Angie Sage, which is the 5th book in the Septimus Heap series, which is about a boy called Septimus who is the 7th son of a 7th son and is amazingly magical. And in this one there are sirens. Well, she's not quite a siren, she's more like a spirit, but she's called a siren. And dragons and djinn warriors and evil people and boats, and there's so much that happens in it. I mean, it's that big for a reason, but I flew through it. This is a series I'm familiar with because it's like my favourite series ever, but this was at the point in the series where I didn't actually know what was going to happen. I couldn't remember how the world was going to get saved. I couldn't remember what actually was going to happen other than the character Ciara, the character that appears on the island. I knew I loved her and I knew I loved her story, but oh, it was so heartbreaking. I was really sad we didn't know what would happen, and I'm hoping she turns up in like the later books. The character of the siren was also really interesting. I knew I liked characters kind of focused on sirens, so that was really fun. The djinn and the djinn warrior were interesting, like additions to the world, and also the rocks, and seeing Jenna interact with her father, because I forgot that he was kind of like a thing, and so seeing that is quite interesting because she feels loyal to the Heaps because obviously they were her family for much longer, and then Milo just kind of appeared and disappeared again, so she is justifiably angry. made the mistake of moving that camera twice now, and amount of times now to apply protection, so I can never get it back in the right place. Right. Yeah, I'm back on that side. I was thinking about this book a while ago, thinking about it in terms of feminism, and whilst there are a lot of women in it, they don't kind of like interact, and obviously Septimus is the main character, so he's kind of like the focus of a lot of the interactions. And well, there's that, and I was really worried. I was like, oh, how can my favourite book be like not feminist? And then I was like, oh wait, never mind. The women in this are like fiercely feminist, and like Jenna always wants to do stuff, and the only reason she's told not to is because she's the only heir to the throne, and therefore her being around is still important. Like I said with the last one, she's not chased around, or she's not doing the chasing as the love interest. She just exists, and the one who likes her follows her around like a lost puppy, and I think that's really interesting. Also, Lucy Grinch is like scary, and she scares all the men. And then finally Wolf Boy is obviously a guy, and he's the one that kind of is due to take over from Aunt Zelda, and Aunt Zelda goes to see the Queen and says, can this guy be the next keeper? And the Queen's like, yeah, sure, why not? And that's it. There's no kind of like, oh, but he's a man and it's always been women. It's just like, yeah, sure, whatever, let's change it up a bit. And then Marcy is the extraordinary wizard, and it's not like wizard is a man and witch is a woman. Like a wizard is a certain thing and then witches are something else, and I really enjoy it. I then read 2 non-Believathon books, the first of which being The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. This is the prequel to the Hunger Games books, and the Hunger Games are about a series of death tournaments where 24 tributes enter this arena and have to fight to the death until one survives, and there's a whole series in a rebellion about that. But the prequel follows President Snow, being President Snow, when he's a student, and the games are only in their 10th run, whereas the original trilogy are based around the 74th and the 75th games, and the world's completely different. And it's really interesting. So when the book starts, Snow's like really poor, and so he's doing this mentor tribute program to get a sponsorship to go to school, well, to go to university, so then he can train to be president and things, because that's like his one aim and that's what everyone knows he's going to be. And so his relationship with his tribute is really interesting, because obviously he's very much forming a relationship with her to better himself, and then any relationship they then form seems unrealistic because it's formed on the basis of him like kind of, what's the word, Stockholm syndrome-y, and yeah, it feels like a bit uncomfortable, but also she seems fine with it. And then the ending is weird, but that is so incoherent. I have 2 reviews of this. I have a spoiler and a non-spoiler one, and I will link them both down below, and so you can see what I actually thought. But yeah, it was interesting. The book is so slow. Like, it's not an insubstantial book, it's over 500 pages, and not a lot really happens. Like, the first half is interesting because it's political and sets up the world and sets up a different world to what we know. The third, I think I said the first half, I meant the first third. Then the second third is kind of the games, but it's interesting because it's the games and you're like waiting to see what's going to happen because they've all got to kill someone somehow. But it's in a different way to how the original ones are. Like, there's no big arena, there's no big mutts and things, and that's quite sneaky. And then the third half was like completely out of the blue. I had no idea that was going to happen. Oh, and the way Snow acts in that half is much more like how we see Snow in the original books, where he's calculating, he's doing things for his own gain. His relationships he forms to help him out, and then the ending was super rushed considering the rest of it was so slow. The fact that the ending sorted itself out within like 20 pages. I was just like, where did this all come from? I had to reread it and I was very confused. So yeah, I rated it 3 stars because there were a lot of things I liked because I'd read the original trilogy, but there were also some things I didn't like because I had read them. So I liked how they set up the games and they taught us about the world, but I didn't like Snow and I couldn't sympathise with his character, which I think was the point, but it just made it a bit difficult to read, like a bit unrealistic, because I couldn't believe some of the relationships he was forming. I thought other characters in it were interesting, like Sejanus and Lucy Gray. I actually liked the title after having read it, because when you first heard the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, you're like, oh, it's that generic the something of something and something that a lot of YA books are using, but the whole book is a ballad. It's got so many songs. I heard someone like describe it as a musical, which basically it is. And then the songbirds are big in it because Lucy Gray sings a lot, and also there are mockingjays and jabberjays, which are interesting, and you understand now why Snow hates them with quite such vengeance when Katniss is one. And then the snakes, you're like, oh, it'll be Snow, but also there are like literal snakes from the beginning, and they're like the first mutts we see introduced, and how they're introduced and what they do I think is quite interesting. But then how the games conclude, not just how the games conclude, but how the games are treated and then not quite remembered but sort of remembered, is interesting. But I don't want to say too much because spoilers. But yeah, I rated it 3 stars, which surprised me because everyone either seemed to love or hate it, but I just wasn't blown away. But also I'd reread it, and probably reread it when I wasn't in a rush, because I was just kind of like, oh, I just want to finish this book now. Hi everyone, so I'm jumping in from the future to say that I forgot to mention one of the books I read in May, which doesn't imply it's particularly memorable, but it's mostly because I forgot to write any notes before filming this video, which is why I ramble so much. But anyway, the other book I read was Invisible Women by Caroline Criado Perez. I listened to this as an audiobook, which I got on loan from my library. I rated it 4 stars because I really enjoyed it. It was actually really interesting. It spoke about really important things about how, because women are women, they aren't considered as important, their views aren't important, how they live, how their bodies are different isn't like considered. So certain medical things are based on men, and then they just assume that women are just smaller men, and kind of things like that. And so it was really interesting. It was talking about how the infrastructure of the world, like roads, public transport, would be different if like women were like the, I don't want to say primary sex, but like the ones in charge, and how healthcare and maternity leave would be different if women were the ones who were making most of the decisions. And so yeah, I found it really interesting because of that. It was like sometimes very statistics based, which it had to be because it's like a research non-fiction, but sometimes I was just like, you're just saying numbers and I don't know what they are. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I rated it 4 stars. Would definitely recommend you all reading it because it just makes you so much more aware of the world. Like certain bits about, I mean, I know that women's healthcare issues aren't thought about as much, but it suddenly made me think about how like mine hadn't been. And whilst I haven't had like any issues with my period or something, having painful periods, I went through a phase where I would get like really bad headaches all the time. I don't know if they were migraines or what, but there would just be some days where I hadn't slept enough and it would kind of build up over like 3 weeks, and then I'd just like pass out for the day and I'd be sick. And I went to the doctor and they were like, yeah, you're just getting a bit faint. And I'm like, and I remember coming out and crying, but when I was thinking about it, like when I was listening to this, and I was like, that's that typical, almost like Victorian England kind of way of dealing with women, just patting them on the head and being like, yes dear, you're hysterical. And it just felt like that. And so yeah, it was really interesting. I would really recommend you picking it up, and I may read it again at some point, get my own copy and highlight it. The final book I read but slightly finished in June was Silence of the Girls by Pat Baker. This is a kind of retelling of Briseis, someone from like the Trojan War, or Achilles' slave lady from the Trojan War, where they're trying to rescue Helen and all that, and Patroclus and all those people. But it retells the women's story. I'm going to put that down because I'm going to make noises. It retells the women's story, and it's been on my radar for a while, and it was the Dark Academia book club pick for May, but it was kind of announced halfway through, so I didn't quite finish it in time. But I got it from the library, enjoyed it, rated it probably 3 stars again, because it was a bit not boring and not, it wasn't thrilling, but that's the point. Like, they didn't have a thrilling time, they didn't do lots of exciting things, they were just there as these sex slaves, and it gives them a chance to tell their story, but they don't necessarily have a story to tell. And I thought it was really interesting, but just not really thrilling, if that makes sense. I can't work out, is the Trojan War real? I don't know if it's retelling history or retelling a myth, but kind of like Madeline Miller kind of esque retellings. But it was interesting, and I kind of don't know what to say about it other than that. I thought it was really well written. I thought Briseis, I don't know what her name was a brave character, because she was facing this really difficult situation where, like, she's got to be the lover to the man that killed her husband and her brothers, and just kind of show no reaction to it. And I just felt like that was quite interesting and an unseen part, and the fact that I didn't know about her, or even knew about her story before this, was, yeah, quite telling. And I would love to read more stories in this vein. I assume it's not real, because, like, it's actually interacting with the gods, but I don't know. But anyway, I'm going to finish it here because I've just been waffling about books I didn't prepare for and can't remember about, really. I think I had a good reading month. I enjoyed all the books I read, I just didn't love most of them. So yeah, these are all the books I read physically in the month, and I enjoyed most of them. They were fun. Let me know if you've read any of them yourself, or if you're planning to. Hopefully I haven't put you off, but I always worry about that. Like this video if you enjoyed it, comment down below to let me know you're here. Sign a petition for me, the least you can do. I'd rather you signed a petition than commented, but both are obviously good. And I will see you in the next video. Bye!